My name is Bruce Johnson. I'm with ATG. I'm a senior MEP technical specialist. Our topic today, if you want to take a snapshot of our screen here, you can take a look at our LinkedIn page. You can look at our YouTube pages and see some of our previous videos and things. I like to always just throw that up there so you guys can see what we're doing at ATG and some of the technical content that we can provide you in those cases. If I go to my PowerPoint here, I try not to do many PowerPoints because I know everybody is focused on what we actually really want to see, right? The Revit side of it. So as I hopefully cycle through some pages, there you go. This is for our one-line diagrams in Revit. And this is an interesting topic to me because the concept is sound, right? It's not a thing that is usually done inside of Revit, number one. But there is the capability of doing this inside Revit. So I want to just kind of run through the topic itself, kind of how that relates to workflows, and if you have other workflow ideas that you can get from this. So if you were, say, a mechanical engineer and you had some type of a control diagram or another object style that you wanted to do something similar to a one-line or some sort of a flowcharty kind of a thing, you can actually do that with real-world components inside of Revit. So again, if this is not perfectly suited for you, again, this is more of a outside the box thinking type seminar that we're doing today. So what are our goals? Answer the question, can we actually do one-lines in Revit? So hopefully we'll get to a showing that gives you the ability to say, yes, we can, or no, we can't. And it's going to be more on you to figure out for your firm, does this actually work for you or not? So we'll leave the chat window open here as well. So if anybody has questions, you can post those and I'll try to get to those while we're going. So it's more of an open-ended thing. I'm not really stuck into I have to show you these exact things in this exact order. So if there's a question that pops up or you're not understanding or whatnot, definitely ask questions whenever you can. I'll try to get those answered during the seminar. I'll try to hold this to about 45 minutes today if at all possible. Make sure everybody gets the idea and runs through the opportunity to get back to work. So what are we going to accomplish? Or what do we need to accomplish the goal? Understand the design options and their possibilities. So this is making it all possible under design options. Most people in the MEP world probably think design options bad because when you do that with, say, mechanical objects and you put it in a design option, you can't connect it to another device that isn't in the design option and get anything like flow, or you can't do any connections to circuits and things in design options, right? So looking outside the box, this is another thing to do in MEP with design options, right? What's in a tag? So what can we put in tags that make things more intelligent or more user-friendly for the process that we're going to do? Conduits and key styles for line work options. We could just draw lines in between our objects, just freehanded in a drafting view or something like that, right? But what if we actually drew this real 3D object to 3D object? That would make a little bit of difference, wouldn't it? So being able to draw, instead of just using lines, using an actual conduit, and then using conduit key styles as a schedule inside of Revit to assign a real conduit style. Well, that might be a good idea. The one lines are generated from real objects in Revit. I probably should have switched those two in my bullet points. And then how does timeline affect how you generate one lines? And then what other tools can we use for one lines outside of Revit potentially that may do a better job? So that's kind of my outline for what we're going to do today. So if I jump to my next slide, let's see what Revit can do. So it's my rebus here is Revit Time, right? So if I jump into my PowerPoint and hit escape, then I'm now in Revit, right? I can come back to those slides later if we need to. So essentially to do a one line, this is something that's been enabled in something that we have from CTC software called the MEPPP. If you're not familiar with that, contact us at ATG if you're an MEP firm and find out about MEPPP. It's a launch pad for you guys to build development off of, and a lot of work has already been done in here. So we don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel or spend thousands of hours. There's about 30,000 hours of man-hour time into building this as a content package. So it's not even a piece of software. It's not buttons to push or anything like that. It's literally a starter template and lots of content. 400 plus details, 350 or more schedules, and all the family content that comes with it, all the tags that come with it. That's all pre-done for you, basically. So if you were to want to take a peek at that, we also use other tools for CTC, like our parameter jammer for mechanical engineers to bring in content from, say, mechanical equipment manufacturers and put the right parameters in them so they work with our schedules. All that kind of stuff is done within this package. So all that's good stuff, but you guys want to see OneLines, right? So if I go to my project setup and go to, say, my general floor plans, and I can just see my footprint of my building. My electrical room is right down here in this corner, and it's got a bunch of stuff in it already, but most of that's turned off in my project setup view. So essentially what I'm going to do in here is generate a section. When I do that, I will make sure I'm in a working section for general project setup, and just make a section cut that actually spans the entire building. So this is one of the things I'm needing to do to generate an overall plan that encompasses all the objects. So I'm creating a section cut that spans the entire building all at once. When I go to that view, I now have a section cut that sees everything, and it's currently wireframe, so I can see all the way through the building. And where is it? Right in here somewhere is our electrical room. So in this case, there may be panels and stuff out in the warehouse. There might be panels in my electrical room. There might be other service objects in there. Essentially what I'm trying to do here is filter down to the things that I actually need to see. Come on. Just want to make sure my grip is seeing everything here. Well, I got some extra stuff out there. I know what that is, but I don't need to go into that. It's two other linked views. They're placeholders that don't actually have any entities in them yet. So essentially within the pack, once I've built my section cut, I need to control what I see. And inside of our package, there's our view templates that are specific to all kinds of things. And one of these is a one-line section. If I were to tell this to show me everything, you can see we have lots and lots and lots of view templates, right? But in this case, if I just go to my elevations and sections and whatnot, makes it a lot easier to find. And when I go to my electrical one-line section, I'm going to say OK. And you'll notice that pretty much everything in my drawing disappears. So my view template for my one-line section is only showing me very, very few objects. And it looks like no objects other than the crop boundary. But essentially, if I were to make a selection set, you can see how that stuff kind of just visibly reappears, right? So these are all my pieces of electrical equipment in my drawing. These are all the real objects, the real 3D objects in the real space inside my section, because I cut my section all the way through the building. So the idea or the concept here is, if I deselect those for the moment, all those objects are really still there. So if I hover over them, I can find them, right? So my goal here is that once I have selectable items, if I were to pick on that object, and I think if I go to edit type, now let's go to hide in view, override graphics in view by element. I just want to see what the settings are here currently. So if I were to look at colors by material, whatnot, those are by material currently. You could do the same thing here with all these objects by just turning them white on a white background. Essentially makes it a non-plottable object in that case if it's true white to true white. So that's a kind of a Revit trick that we can use to leave an object intact in place and actually not see it in the view without actually hiding it from view or actually turning it off, as if with our little sunglasses here or something like that, or going to visibility graphics and literally turning the object off. So everything else in my view is actually hidden except for these objects. So that plays a big component in how we get to one-lines inside of Revit. So the other piece we need to kind of think of to see here is I need to change to a power view in case I add objects, right? And then if I look to my right just a little bit, I do have design options within this package of tools. This is where we get into the first item on my list. What's a design option and what can we actually use it for? So if you've ever been frustrated with MEP and working internally in a design option, you say, oh, I want to run this ductwork down this hallway or down this corridor. And I'm not sure I really want to run it there, so maybe I have an alternate corridor from the core of the building that loops around or something like that. Maybe I want to run it down this one instead. You could go into a design option, create a new design option name, and run it in 2 different places, but you can only connect one to the real equipment that's not a design option and still get flow out of it. So to know whether you are fully connected or not and things like that. Design options do not work well for multiple geometry types in systems. So that's gonna just debunk that as an idea, right? We need to work fully within systems so they're all connected all in one chunk. They can't be in alternate universes, which is basically what a design option is. So within our main model, our model groups that we would normally have in work sets, the idea behind the design option is whatever you put into any other design option doesn't really exist. In the case of a OneLine, that's a really good idea because I can do whatever I want in there. So I have a OneLine design option here, and there's an empty and a OneLine. So I need to set my current view that I'm in to my OneLine, and I can do that a lot easier just by going down here where it says main model, changing that to OneLine. And now I have a little bit of difference here. If I do my selection set on that same area, I can't actually select those objects. So now that I'm in my OneLine drawing, I'm in my alternate universe, place that I can do whatever I want. I can't even touch my real objects in that view. So I can't accidentally go move them out of the way or accidentally hide them or do any other strange things to them. I just know that they're there, but I can't really touch them. If I change my design option active only to uncheck that, then I can go back and reselect them and see them where they're actually located and things like that. But I really don't want to have any chance of moving them by accident in my real world, right? So by leaving that turned on and my selection set says I cannot select them anymore, now I've got my alternate universe that I can draw anything in, but I'm as if I'm in my main model. I'm at a 1/2 inch equals a foot for my scale. So I'm treating this more like a drafting view, but it's really a section. And that section sees my real objects. So if I were to create a drafting view and just start plopping objects on there, I would then have to go into my families and create potentially hundreds of families under my annotation symbols so I could put those in a drafting view. So this is alleviating my need necessarily of having an abundance of other objects in my annotation symbols that I would need to do otherwise with other symbology in a drafting view or legend type scenario. So all that kind of pushed to the side. What's our next topic here? What do we need to go into? Like basically my next thing on the PowerPoint was, so what's a tag? And how can we use a tag intelligently? So if I were to go to my annotate tab and then tell it I want to tag all, I'm going to tag all of something, right? And the thing that I have in this view that I can't see or touch anymore would be my electrical equipment in my drawing. So with my electrical equipment, I should be able to jump over to my tag type. And this is all the same exact tag throughout this entire model. But in here, it's showing me my OneLine abilities here. So if I do say a panel right side, essentially what that's saying is my tag is going to show me a panel or a rectangle, and then any annotative objects that are along with it, maybe some parameters, for instance, would show up on the right side of that tag. So if I just say apply to that and OK, then we see we have all these continuous pieces of panels as if they think they're all panels, right? If I have a transformer and a generator, those might actually need other tags to exist and show up correctly. So if I have utility transformer, I might select on that tag and tell it that I want to change that to a transformer. Let's see, XFMR. So there's utility transformer, a generator. We might have a tag called generator here. So I'm giving myself new symbols based on the equipment type that I've got, right? See if we've got other transformers in here. I think I do somewhere. There's a main switchboard. I don't know if I have a tag for that one. Electrical equipment, that's just E tag. So I've got generators, panels, and transformers as my 3 tags that are in here now. But if I had a different, like a square box for switchboards or interior transformers. For whatever reason, maybe those are going to be circles or hexagons or something like that, something that I can tell the difference immediately between object types. I could just generate more tags that I would put in my annotation symbols that would have actual geometry or symbolic geometry, right? Because basically this is a tag, it's just a generic annotation and some labels. So if I were to go into my tag here with my edit family, literally all I've got is a circle with letter G and then a bunch of information that comes from my parameters. So anything else that I want to add into parameters into the real equipment, some of this data is going to fill out. So that's kind of cool, just for the fact that just the idea here is I can make a symbol, potentially a text value, and or any other labels that I want inside of this tag. And then because it's a tag, if I were to move this anywhere in the drawing and then tell it I want to draw a leader back to the source object, I can point right to it, right? So the source object is here, but because this is a tag, I can put it anywhere. So if my generator and my utility transformer are up above, and then I've got a bunch of panels, maybe I want to move them in kind of a sequence with each other. So they're all in a single line or objectively similar to each other. Bring my fire alarm control panel over here. Not sure what that guy is. I can literally move these anywhere, right? And I can select them all and turn leaders on and say, I know exactly where those objects came from. So later on, if I decide that I've added 20 more pieces of electrical equipment, all I have to do is tag all with that same tag, and it's going to tag anything that doesn't already have a tag, right? So I can add things whenever I want, and these other components are going to show up. And I could even move everything up and away 50 feet above the building for the tags if I wanted to, and then rearrange them however I want to do any kind of connection between one object and another. So the cool thing about this is with our tags, we're tagging anything that we want to actually tag for electrical equipment, being able to organize and arrange them however we want anywhere in my one-line drawing, which is just my section, right? And all these things are pointing all over the place. I'm just going to turn my leaders off because I don't really need them on. But now I could actually do something with them to create my one-line drawing. In this case, instead of just drawing, say, drafting lines, which I could do, I could go into my annotate and actually draw detail lines and choose the line style that I want, right? And make any line that I want from any object from one to the next. I can do that for sure, but then there's also things like conduits within our productivity pack that we'd also need to take a peek at to see what the functionality that'll give us. So if I were to go to schedules, electrical and power within this package, I do have conduit and I do have a conduit key schedule. And this conduit key schedule basically shows me my listing number. So there's, how many is there? 1,234 styles in there. For conduits, my headers say that I've got key name and comments. Those are usually the same. My nominal conductor ampacity is here. My conduit and conductors, 1/2 inch minimum or 3/4 inch minimum. If we have sets, and then the actual feeder conduit size. So if I knew I needed, say, a 2-inch conduit, I could run through my schedule here and maybe pick this 175/83 or something, as long as my wire sizing and types are okay with that. But I got 1,000 of them in here, right? So there's lots and lots and lots to choose from. And if I just know what's in this table, then I can actually use that when I build conduits. So when I'm in my section cut, if I were to go to systems and draw a conduit, in my conduit types, I actually have a type within this tool called OneLine Conduits. So it knows that this OneLine conduit is something that I use in my OneLine view. It is a true 3D object, but I'm in a design option, right? So it's not actually going to count any of my, say, linear feet of conduit in a regular conduit schedule because it doesn't actually really exist because it's still in a design option. So I can use this OneLine conduit in here all day long, and it's not actually going to build anything new or special in there. So if I were to draw to an object, I can actually go in and like find transformers and stuff in here if they exist. Usually I don't want to necessarily do that, but if I wanted to go, say, from this panel to, say, my transformer, if there was a box here or something that I was connecting to, you'll notice I do have conduit and a conduit fitting for the elbow there. If I select on a piece of conduit and go into my properties, I can see that there's a conduit key style. This key style is that table. So if I hit my drop down, now I have access to all my 1,000-something versions of conduit keys that I had elsewhere, right? So if I choose a type, 50A2, now this conduit style is 50A2. It doesn't do it to the fitting or the next piece of conduit, but I just did that one run. But I could actually say maybe I want to create similar and make a whole bunch of these with the same conduit key style, and it would keep that value. Or I could go change them individually on each and every piece of every little run that I have. Once I've done any type of a connection, this is not really a connection. It's not going to a connector. There's still a gap there, right? So this is just a random drawing of conduit from one point to the next on a flat plane in a section. We don't really care how far away that is, how deep it is from the actual spot that we're really in. All we really care about is that we have line work. That's connecting two objects together. And then we have the ability to also tag that object. So if I do tag by category and I pick on my conduit, maybe I get rid of my leader, then I have the option there of placing that tag and having that key tag sitting on top of my line. Should be an opaque option to that as well, so it'll even cut and break into if I stick it on top. So the idea of having conduits and key styles in here gives us the ability to have somebody in the know, either the engineer or any IT or something like that, who's actually trying to draw real conduits from item to item, actually show the real conduit tag that may be used in another drawing elsewhere that actually goes on a plotted sheet. But you're actually here having the ability to call out exactly which conduit and style goes from item to item to item in the OneLine, and then put any other annotation type symbols that you want in there as well. So you've got other systems for buses or fuses or anything like that that would go in between some of these objects. You might just go out and draw those as annotation symbols, drag them over the top of, say, a line of, say, conduit, or even make a real object for that object that actually places it in line to that piece of conduit. Could even do that. But I would suggest annotation symbols for the most part. If they have something like the tag here, it has an opacity to it, so it's actually making a mask over the top of the actual line. It's still all one line, right? But we can throw something over the top of it that makes it look like it's broken or has a tag. All right, so that's our conduit. So the next bullet point was OneLines are generated from real objects. Again, those objects are all still there, right? So if I were to go to active only and do a selection set down here, I should be able to see those real objects, right? They're still really there. They were really tagged as if they were the actual real object. So everything that's in our model has the ability to be representative of an object. So if I were to come into this object here, I've got kind of select in the background because I turned active only off. And if I actually delete this data rack, then the tag that was associated to it also would disappear. I don't know why or where the actual tag went to at that point, but let's see if we can find something else that will disappear nicely. So if I do another deletion on that one, it says, yes, it'll be deleted, and then something in here just disappeared from it because a tag cannot exist without its electrical equipment, right? So the nice thing about this OneLine tool is if I change things up, if I delete objects, I add objects too, it's tracking the real objects in my OneLine. So if I do a type swap and it's no longer this panel, but it's a square D panel or something like that, and it's got different properties. Electrical equipment. I think I have some other panel types in there, but I have to think about that. Maybe, maybe not. Usually there's a lot of components in here. In my sample model, I may have purged some of those out already. Like I say, if we start changing things out, maybe this panel is 150 amps instead of 125. If it swaps, all this data is going to change immediately in the OneLine because it's coming from the real parameters in the real objects. So that would be some of the power that's behind this. They were actually working with real things really in Revit. And if we add things, all we have to do is tag more. If I've moved all my tags here, I go back to active only. If I were to move all my tags in Conduit, again, like I say, way up in space, anytime I add a new set of tags on new equipment, they would show up down below and I'd need to move them up, right? So I may not want to leave all my tags extra super close to all my equipment inside the model. But we do have the ability to show that nicely. Let's see, I got some questions here. We work in a specialty field and we're primarily an arch with specialty equipment families with the same process work in Revit that isn't MEP. So at the start of this seminar, I said that this could kind of expand your brain a little bit about some of the possibilities, right? So all we're doing here is drawing say a flow diagram or a downstream diagram from one piece of equipment to another and how power is being related from one piece of equipment to another, right? So that's the idea of what's in this productivity pack. That's the thought process behind it. But we only have OneLine diagrams in this productivity pack for electrical engineers currently, right? So anybody who wanted to do some sort of a control diagram or OneLine diagram, riser diagram, whatever you like, you could do exactly the same process. All you have to do is generate a tag, and the tag generally needs some type of parameter data that identifies the equipment. So if you use the identity mark, type mark, mark number, whatever you wanted as one of your labels, and then a shape that you could draw from one line to another object, whether it's just regular line work or whether you use Conduit like we did. Totally up to you on how you want that represented. So yes, you could use this concept for any kind of a flow type diagram inside of Revit using the real actual equipment. So the things that you would need for that would be the tags that you need for annotations. You would need a design option, right? But that's pretty much the extent of it. The tags that are associated to the equipment, the design option to have your alternate space, alternate universe to work in. And then because this is an actual view, right? Even though it's a design option, we can still print it on a printed sheet. We'll just drag and drop it onto a sheet and you're ready to go at that point. Let's see, how do you move the text so it is in line? I'm assuming that means the conduit tag there. I actually had to nudge it. It was trying to snap to the bottom or the top, which was kind of interesting. So if I move it out, I can see I've got the option of a leader or not, right? But if I move it in line, just with the move command, you should be able to move it in line and see that it does that without any problem. If you move equipment tag, the tag moved, yes. I can't really pin my tags, right? So if I move my transformer from one side of the building to the other, the tag is going to move with it. Then I would need to go manually grab that tag and move it back to the line endpoint that I had before. So one little small disadvantage to that. But ideally, if you're doing the one lines here, you're probably not moving things all that much after the fact. Let's talk about that portion of that workflow in just a moment. Other questions? Do you have CTC electrical equipment families for the OneLine tool to work, or will the CTC software work with custom-made families and other vendor families? All of these that are in here right now are CTC families, but that doesn't mean it won't work with every other family type because I tagged electrical equipment, right? So it'll tag any kind of electrical equipment, whether it will produce the label information correctly. That's up to you guys having the same shared parameters that I have, right? So if you're doing this all independently, you don't have the pack, obviously there would be a bit more work that you would have to do. But in the overall scheme of things, can it be done? Absolutely. Does it have to be electrical one lines? Not really. It could be any type of equipment, right? The challenge on, say, the mechanical equipment, maybe you have some of the equipment is powered by natural gas, for instance, and not electricity. In those cases, if you'd say, I want to tag all of my mechanical equipment, then you would get tags even on the stuff that doesn't have any electrical power, right? So that would be another instance of, do I want it to actually do that or not? I could actually expand this a bit. So if I had giant air handlers and stuff that I wanted to include in my OneLine also, then I'd probably want to set filters within this particular section cut for electrical OneLine that would also show, say, mechanical equipment that needs a heavy duty connection or a disconnect switch or something like that, something that where I could actually schedule those items or tag those items also to include them in this list. Otherwise, I would just need some sort of a placeholder version of an annotation symbol that I could drag in and call that something else also. So while this isn't a super fully fledged, best case ever one-line scenario, the concept is very strong. So I really like that about how the pack is giving people that aren't using high-end analysis software for electrical the ability to do a one line and track it with real objects. Let's see, what else do we have here? And again, your vendor families that you may have in there, all you would need to do is make sure that those vendor families have the right parameter embedded in them. If the parameters are embedded in schedules, we do have other tools from CTC software as well. So under CTC software, we have Parameter Jammer. It basically says if you have a schedule, you can take the parameters from the schedule and push them into a piece of, say, manufacturer equipment. So if it was a transformer and it came from XYZ electrical company, as long as that was a parameter that was built into a schedule that I'm scheduling, I could use that same schedule to push my parameters into a manufacturer piece of equipment. And if that is affected also by the tag that I see here, this can push hundreds of parameters in just a minute or two directly into a family, which is really nice. The other side of that is if you are working with, say, entire libraries of content and you want them to work similarly, again, the right parameter for the tag has to be in there. If you downloaded an entire library of, I don't know, say light fixtures or something, and you want every single light fixture in your one line, you could go into the thing called Family Processor, which is a way to basically fix families that you get from outside your firm typically. And you could even say, I want to go in and add the 3 parameters that I need for these panels, for instance, to actually tag correctly. I want to do that across an entire library, and probably in less than 15 minutes, have all those parameters pushed into all those files, saved. You reload those files or those families back into your project, and then all of them will tag correctly and update their tags with the proper labels. So as long as that data is in the family, those values should populate. And that tool can even resolve and add values. It can add formulas directly into those families under those parameters that you want also, where the parameter jammer is just getting you the parameter itself pushed into the family, and you still have to fill out the data thereafter. So extra tools, not part of our productivity pack. I highly recommend anybody that doesn't have the green tools, that's a power tool that everybody should have for Revit. It does a lot of great things. For BIM managers and power users that manage libraries, the blue suite of tools is perfect for those users. The plotter and the family upgraders and the project processors, a lot of BIM coordinators and BIM managers would use these as well. There's lots of things you can do to automate making PDFs and things like that. So between all the tool sets that we really have, there's some fantastic stuff here to kind of get started with. Like I said, it's not necessarily a complete methodology for doing high-end one-lines across like big industrial projects or something like that. But if you don't have a one-line tool currently, and you're wondering how could I do that without going into AutoCAD and just drawing it and then importing it or linking it as an AutoCAD file, that would be a way to start exploring what you can do inside of Revit and leave these items as fully coordinated items inside your project. So if you had 10 parameters you're reporting on each one, but you only see 3 right now, as soon as you pick on that object and fill out the rest of the parameters, you would get all the rest of those tags, right? So then you're not trying to do some weird imports or something else, or having disconnected workflows where you draw your one line and you put all the values in there, and 3 months later somebody goes in and changes, say, your transformer or panel to something different than what it is, and somebody forgets to go back into the CAD file. Those are my disconnected workflows I want to stay away from as much as possible, because that's a chance for error, right? So anything we can do inside of Revit entirely and manage it inside of Revit, that's always a better idea than having disconnected workflows and having somebody responsible for knowing what's outside of Revit and what's inside of Revit. And then how do we make sure that that data is flowing and updated correctly before you actually hit the print button, so everything is truly up to date at that point. So my main concept there is anything I can do inside of Revit, anything I can control inside of Revit and have it fully coordinated with my Revit model, with my schedules, with my plotted sheets, always better. whether it's a workflow that looks pretty enough and has the right stuff in it, has the right annotation symbols that I might add to these lines, maybe not so much. So definitely some work to be done in some areas if you want to use it and you want to make it look per se pretty, right? How do you move the text so it's in line letter tags? I'm not sure if that's just meaning to edit the family. So in other words, if this is overriding my line work or something like that, I would just go into the family itself in the tag and just move those labels to where they need to go, whether you want it left side, right side, bottom. But the components themselves, if you move them, they will track with other components. So they do show up kind of in line with each other based on their references from their endpoints of text lines and things like that, right? If it's the box itself, it tries to line up center to center in those cases. So if I want to draw it straight across, I can do those. How do you place it on a sheet with the wire tag schedule? So on sheets, let me find my view here first. Like, where did it put it? I have my section 1, and it is Power OneLine. That's my schedules, instruction documents, sections, OneLine. So that's my section 1, right? So if I made this a view name called electrical OneLine or something like that, right? And then go find a sheet that might work. Electrical, let's just say maybe my 804 is my sheet that I'm going to place it on. Doesn't really have anything else in there, so that's fine. So if I were to place this electrical OneLine, see where it stuck it. It's up there right now, so I'd need to probably crop my view and make it look clean, right? But then I could place it on the sheet correctly, give it the view label. Here it is. Is that moving the whole thing? Yeah, it is. I go back to main model, so I'm not in my design option in my sheet. Maybe I can grab it then. There we go. So if I resize that down and grab my view title, move that up in my sheet, then I've got pretty much what I need, right? I get rid of my crop region views. So I don't have to continually resize them or have it override my plot boundary. But yeah, I can definitely get that into a sheet without any problem. And it is truly in a design option. So if I were to double click in here and try to manipulate things in the background while I'm in my main model, I can get to my real objects that are white. But if I go to my OneLine, I can make any changes and draw more conduit if I need to, things like that. So I can work through the sheet boundary, just as long as I'm in the right design option at that point. All right, so the wire tag schedule, if that was a schedule, I could just drag that onto the same sheet, right? Shouldn't be any problem in doing that. Not sure why that's all grayed out. That's kind of weird. Might be them saying that it's not on in my sheet list or something like that. Maybe that's a helper saying that it's not one of my sheets to plot or something like that with a filter. Don't know. But you get the idea, right? We can do that. We could break it up into multiple sheets based on crop boundaries and potentially even scope boxes if we wanted to, right? So we could have a OneLine that crosses multiple sheets, has a squig between one conduit and the next sheet, and then says connect to OneLine on sheet 804 versus sheet 805 or something like that. So all that coordination could be done. I was going to say, do we have more questions? Looks like we've had quite a few here so far. Is there an easy way to draw parallel lines out of one device to another? Because those are conduits, I should be able to draw parallel conduits, right? So if there were, say, 6 of them that are all coming out together, I would just use my conduit tool, hit parallel, and say go, and it should do that. I believe that's always oriented to the view that you're in as well. Let me think about that one for a moment. So I go back here and go back to my OneLines, and let's just say I wanted to grab that conduit Go to my systems and say parallel conduits. So if I had 2 horizontal with 1 foot offsets, just 1 vertical, let's make that 3 so we can see what it's actually going to do. If I hover over that, yeah, my device isn't that wide, so maybe if I do 3-inch offset horizontally, hover over that object, now I've got my 3 conduits, and I should be able to kind of resize those up and draw off of them from that point. Or if I had that entire run selected, I could have done that with multiple conduits all the way across to other objects and then break them off and branch them over. So hopefully that answers that question. If it was just line work, then I'd have to use like an array command, right? But because it's conduit, I have the option for parallel conduits. And again, I'm not really caring about my depth, so I'd never have a vertical offset component as well. So if I had 3 wide and 2 deep, I wouldn't see the ones behind. I really wouldn't want that all that much, right? Why is it grayed out? I'm assuming that's the title block. I think I answered that. I don't know why that one was grayed out. Let's see, now a schedule. Let's go back to my sheet. 804. And if I had an electrical schedule, let's pull something that is small, like a feeder schedule from out of here. Yeah, I should be able to use that guy. Electrical OneLine, there's my sheet. So if I wanted to drag that on here as well. So there's my conduit feeder schedule. Like I say, why it's grayed out in this view, I'm not sure. Something funky going on in this particular sheet. Why it is, I probably should have just generated a brand new sheet, but then it would have not sorted it correctly. I wanted to stay in an electrical sheet in that case. So did I answer your questions, Chris? Do we get them all, other than the fact that I don't know why the sheet's gray? It's going to bother me all day. I'm going to find out later why this is doing that. But for right now in the demo and in the webinar, maybe I'll skip that one. But yeah, sheets or views of any kind on sheets, schedules on sheets, it's just the same, even though it's the OneLine view in an alternate universe. I can drag these and drop these all day long, place them exactly how I want on a sheet. No problem whatsoever. So I got 2 more bullet points here, and I want to get done in the next 10 minutes or so if I can, if we don't have any extra questions. One of them was discussion on how the timeline affects how you generate OneLines. So when I think of this process that I've just used, right, I've done this OneLine very kind of quickly. It didn't take me very long to generate it whatsoever. I can place all those devices and draw some conduits and whatnot between them, add the right conduit key styles, and probably be done in less than an hour to build that sheet, all things considered. The nicety of this is I did this at probably like 50% CD realistically, because I'm probably not adding any new electrical equipment after that time. I'm trying to get my annotations done. I'm trying to get my details done, right? So my design is probably done at this point when I added this OneLine. A lot of times firms will actually start OneLines before they draw anything in Revit. They'll do that in SD, and then it's typically just a narrative. You're not actually giving any plans on the architectural backgrounds at all at that point, but you do have potentially a total size of building, a guesstimate of maybe the transformer that you need, or maybe some switchboard and things like that. If you have all that ahead of time, to build this, you would need to actually place those objects, and maybe you don't even have all the walls figured out for architecture yet. So in that case, does this system work in the way that you'd expect? Not necessarily. I could go back to like my project setup or a power plan or something like that and tell it that I want to place equipment and just sit it outside the building out here and draw my section. And then once I've actually placed all that equipment, I can draw my lines from OneLine. And then potentially when I get walls, doors, windows, rooms, stairs, roofs, railings, eventually I could come back in and grab the stuff I've just placed for placeholders and stick them in their real physical locations at that point. Then I'd have to redraw all my line work for my conduits and stuff and my tags because they weren't in the real correct place, right? So that would be one distraction on my end to say, if I have to have a OneLine before I have a building to draw in, then the system doesn't necessarily work all that well, because I'd really like to place the real equipment in the real room one time and then draw my OneLine off of that. So whether you used like a Visio or something like that to kind of get things down your head, or a SketchUp or Format or something like that to make a mock OneLine or even CAD initially. That would be one way to get around that. And then later come in and do a real OneLine with real equipment in its real physical locations. After you think you got it all in the correct places, then that becomes easier to use this type of a system. And my last bullet was, what other tools can be used? The only other tool that I know of currently that does electrical OneLines inside of Revit would be Design Master. I think that's like $1,000 or $1,500 program, something like that. It does use the electrical equipment from inside of Revit. It does generate a true OneLine diagram with a bunch more of the what am I saying? Just lost my train of thought for a moment. So let you use the real equipment in the drawing, place a real OneLine that's done in a actual drafting view. So it's not using a OneLine design option like we have here. It's using a real drafting view, but somehow it's coordinating the equipment with the real symbol inside the project. So if you delete the electrical equipment, it should remove the symbol as well. So that's another option that's on the low end for cost, to have an additional methodology to do electrical OneLines in Revit. It also does short circuit and arc flash, if I remember correctly. So those things are more common in most larger building types. But if you're going to be doing things like industrial work or like wastewater plants and things like that, working with giant pumps and motor starting or solar farms, anything like that, you're probably going to end up using one of the high-end analysis programs, which would be like SKM Power Tools, ETAP, ePower, something along those lines, where you could be spending $8 to $15 to even maybe $20,000 for one license of software for one user to be able to do all the study types. And in those cases, those programs are letting you build entire electrical equipment systems and even power systems, and then making OneLine diagrams in those programs, which give you an ability to have DXF files. And the DXF file could be linked as just a normal CAD link at that point. So as you continue to make changes in, say, SKM, you could always export those out to DXF, hit the reload button in your Manage Links tab, and have the updates come from those programs easily. And for really, really large systems like SKM has the ability to break those out into multiple sheets really easy. So huge systems, I would probably end up using a high-end system and not something like what I showed today, and just using that as a hybrid for your analysis, doing that work for you, and you bring it in as a secondary CAD file basically, and put that on the sheet that you actually want. All right. I think that's most of the questions. If you have any last ones, you let me know in the next couple of minutes. I'm going to try to shut down the webinar in about 5 minutes if I don't have further questions. It's been fun to show you guys some of the things that we can do in our productivity pack. Again, everything that I showed that was tools here today does come from CTC software. If you don't have those tools and you want to find out more information about them, definitely give us a call, shoot us an email. Let us know that you're interested in those things. We can do custom demos for any firm on those. If you guys are architecture based and you call us up and say, hey, this guy Bruce at ATG did this wonderful demonstration of how we could do kind of a diagram inside of Revit with specialty equipment, and you get one of our architectural techs, they might go, huh? I didn't know we could do that. It's possible. So if you want to do something specialty and for whatever reason, one of our techs may not know exactly what I'm doing in the MEP world, but you want to do something like that for architecture or structure or something like that, you can put a specialty note. Bruce Johnson from the MEP team showed this, and we want to make Revit do blank, whatever that blank is. Pick our brain, see what we can do. We may be able to figure something out for you that makes your workload much easier or lighter in those cases. And we always like to look at kind of the outside the box applications of things that we can do in Revit. This is definitely one of those. Using a design option to do something that it wasn't really actually designed for. Kind of cool in this case. Another application of the same thing within this particular set of tools would be our construction documents under, clean that up a little bit, floor plans and symbols. If I were to go to, say, an electrical symbols list and zoom extents, I have another area in my drawing that's also being controlled by a design option, and this one is a dynamic legend. So in my dynamic legend, I actually do have a segment of wall in this alternate universe of my design option, right? I have a wall with all of my wall-based objects placed on it for my symbols library. I have another view that's a ceiling view where I've placed a ceiling and I've put all my ceiling-based objects in there. And then in the same view, I can see all those objects in my legend, including all my text, right? All my other symbol types, all those are here and they're actually placed on real walls as the real 3D object. But then all the symbolic stuff that comes in a coarse or medium view is the symbol I actually see in this drawing. Therefore, when I place this view onto a sheet, if somebody says, oh, I really don't like the look of this nurse call symbol, those little spikes coming out the side bug me, or I don't really want that little T on the wall, I just want it to be floating away from the wall a little bit, not actually looking like it's really attached or something like that, I could either jump into this view here, edit the family, and have all the other families in the entire model change because it's the exact same family as on my floor plans. Or I could be in a floor plan and be like, yeah, I got to change that, I got to fix it, and make that change. And then it's going to change the symbol in the legend because it's not just an annotation family. It's been placed in a legend in a drafting view. It's actually a real floor plan in a design option. So any change that I make in my model is going to update my symbols. Any change in my symbols is going to update my model. It's all coordinated. I don't have to think about, yeah, I got to go fix blank because I changed these 3 things, right? Or if I need to duplicate a type and maybe there's a D, an F, a P, and a J on my different types of dimmer switches that are new objects. So I've duplicated them in my family, but then I add them in my list here, change the type on them, and maybe even have a, notice this will be an MEP tag. So there's a description category on this device that actually contains the words dimmer switch. So when I'm in this legend, I can actually place as many of these objects as I want, change the descriptions when I make new ones, and just say tag all and have those description keys fill out their values in my legend. And I just maybe need to move them in line with the rest of these, and I'm done with my symbols list. So a couple different applications of how to use design options, right? All right, I'm just about at the end of my time here today. I'm not seeing any other last questions in the chat window. I hope you guys have kind of enjoyed this and had an opportunity to see other ways to make Revit kind of jump through hoops. Whether those are good hoops or bad hoops, those are things that you have to decide for yourselves. And if you decide that, hey, there's an application here that I really want to follow up on, like I say, go ahead and try some of these things for yourselves and figure out, is that good or not? Is this something that will actually save me time or make me more coordinated than before? Those are all good things to strive for. And if you need help with those things, obviously we would love to work with you and make your dreams come true. Not everything is possible, but we like to think that everything is a good possibility or a good thing to work towards if you're looking for standards to be improved and coordination to be improved. These are some of those areas that with the right application, thinking outside the box just a little bit, we can actually do some wonderful things. So hope you guys enjoyed that all. And if you have questions, definitely contact us. Website is atgusa.com. We have about 70 different sales reps. They're covering lots of area of this entire country. So hopefully we already have somebody that we can give you as a resource to start conversations with if you haven't talked to us before. Beyond that, I will let you guys go today. So appreciate your time. Again, if you need follow-up, let us know. Thank you.